If we end up in the scenario, which might not happen, but it is certainly not beyond the bounds of possibility, that the UK as a whole voted to come out of the European Union, but Scotland voted to stay in, I think that would undoubtedly have people in Scotland demanding that we look again at whether we should be independent. Not sitting here saying I think it would make a vote for independence guaranteed or inevitable. I'm sure there would be a variety of different opinions at that time. What I am saying, though, is I think it would, now maybe I'm wrong, but I think it would have many people saying that that is an option we should at least look at again. Incidentally, I've put forward a proposal that would take away the possibility of this scenario arising, this idea that many federal states, and I know we're not a federal country in the UK, but nevertheless an idea that many federal states embrace of double majority, so that for a UK exit, for a Brexit, there would have to be not just a vote across the entirety of the UK, but a vote for that in each of the component nations of the UK. It's the strong position of the Scottish Government that we should continue to be a member of the EU because of the contribution we make and the benefits that we get.
Do you concede at all that there is some division in legal opinion and that some people do argue that you would have to reapply?
The risk, the threat to Scotland's continuing membership of the European Union doesn't come from the prospect of Scottish independence. It comes from a growing Euroscepticism within the UK Government and that possibility of an in-out referendum. I believe that would be the wrong road for Scotland to go down, but that would be the risk for Scotland if it opted to stay within the United Kingdom. Big risk, in my view, to Scotland's continuing relationship with the European Union and continuing membership of the European Union is not the prospect of Scottish independence, but it is the prospect of an in-out referendum promised by the UK Government. I think a good night for Scotland as well. The tectonic plates of Scottish politics have clearly shifted. What we're seeing, I think, is a historic shift in Scottish political opinion. It hasn't happened overnight, not even in the last 7 months since the referendum, although I think that's accelerated the process. But Labour's been losing the trust of people in Scotland now over a period of years.
Our graft has paid off.
There is a swing underway in Scotland, the like of which has not been seen in recorded politics. It is twice the level of any swing recorded in Scotland or indeed across the United Kingdom.
It is not a unitary state, it's a multinational state, and I think it would be wrong for any one member of that multinational family of nations to be taken out of the European Union against its will. So I will argue for what's called a double majority rule that would mean that the UK could only come out of the European Union if each of England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland voted to do so.
And it's also perhaps why nobody really in that referendum argued about whether Scotland should be a member of the EU. The debate on both sides was about how best we could continue to play our part. In fact, the ability to participate more fully in international bodies such as the European Union appealed to many of us on the yes side of that debate as an additional positive reason to seek national independence. The first is, how can you support independence and back Scotland's membership of the EU? Well, the answer to that is simple. I believe that independent countries must cooperate to tackle common challenges. Every member of the EU is an independent country working with others for the greater good. The second question is whether a Brexit vote will mean a second independence referendum. Well, here's what the SNP manifesto at the recent election said about that. The Scottish Parliament should have the right to hold another referendum if there is a significant and material change in the circumstances that prevailed in 2014, such as Scotland being taken out of the European Union against our will. Now, I'm clear that if Scotland does indeed face that prospect of being taken out of Europe against our will, then that option is on the table. But to be clear, that situation only arises if Scotland votes Remain next week. But to be clear, that situation only arises if Scotland votes Remain next week. If Scotland votes to leave, then that premise for independence doesn't arise. But if you're basing your decision on what it means for independence, let me be very, very clear. The only sensible and logical vote is one for Scotland to remain in Europe. Let me address the issue of a second independence referendum. The manifesto that the SNP was elected on last month said this: the Scottish Parliament should have the right to hold another referendum if there is a significant and material change in the circumstances that prevailed in 2014, such as Scotland being taken out of the EU against our will. Scotland does now face that prospect. It is a significant and material change in circumstances, and it is therefore a statement of the obvious that the option of a second referendum must be on the table. Scotland does now face that prospect. It is a significant and material change in circumstances, and it is therefore a statement of the obvious that the option of a second referendum must be on the table.
And I am convinced that when people get that choice again, they will vote for Scotland to be independent, and most of the promises that were made to Scotland at the last referendum by those who argued against independence, not least that we'd continue to be in the European Union, have been broken.
The party that told us in 2014 that independence would take away our European Union membership and then went on to take us out of the European Union, I don't think will have any credibility whatsoever on matters European.
In short, not only did the UK impose Brexit on Scotland, it imposed the hardest and the most damaging of Brexits. And all of this despite the fact that people in Scotland voted overwhelmingly to stay in the European Union.
And it came as a surprise really to no one, therefore, that Scotland voted nearly 2-1 to remain in the European Union.
Huge interest in independence. We sit here on the 5th anniversary actually of the independence referendum. 45% of the people of Scotland voted to leave the UK to remain in the EU, and indeed 55% voted to stick with the UK because we were told that was the only way to guarantee economic stability and our place in Europe.